Okay, so let's just jump right in. What if all these chemicals we hear about, in our food, our water, our everyday products, what if they aren't just an unfortunate side effect of modern life? What if instead they're part of a deliberate attack on our very ability to have children? It's a really explosive claim, I know, but it's at the absolute core of the source material we're digging into today. Yeah, I mean, look at that. A deliberate, corporate state biological warfare operation. The source isn't pulling any punches here. It's saying this isn't some mistake or a case of corporate negligence. It's framing this as an intentional act. That's a huge claim. So the question is, how do they even begin to back that up? Let's see what they've got. All right, so if we're talking about a war, then every war has its weapons, right? Well, according to this source, the arsenal isn't made of bullets and bombs. It's made of chemicals. Three main culprits that they claim are basically woven into the very fabric of our modern world. First on the list are PFAS, which you've probably heard called forever chemicals. And there's a good reason for that name. The source points to their chemical structure. They're built with a carbon-fluorine bond, which is like the super glue of chemistry. It's one of the strongest bonds out there. What that means is they just don't break down. Not in the soil, not in the water, and most importantly, not in our bodies. They just build up and build up and up. And while they're in there, they're described as powerful endocrine disruptors, basically scrambling our hormonal signals, messing with thyroid function, and even tanking testosterone production. Okay, next up we have phthalates. These are the chemicals that make plastics, soft and bendy, but the source points out something really sneaky about them. You're probably never going to see the word phthalate on an ingredients list. Why? Because they're often hidden, completely legally, under one single word, fragrance. It's basically a trade secret loophole. So while you think you're just getting a nice scent, these hormonal disruptors are getting a free pass right into your system. And the third weapon in this alleged arsenal? Microplastics and nanoplastics. The source calls them the ghosts of the plastic we throw away, which is a pretty powerful image, right? Think about it. Every single plastic bottle, every wrapper, every bag, it doesn't just disappear. It breaks down into these tiny, tiny little shards. We're talking so small they can go anywhere, and I mean anywhere. The source highlights that they can cross the most protected gateways in our bodies, like the blood-brain barrier and even the placenta. So where are all these things hiding? Well, that's the scary part. They're not hidden at all. They're right out in the open, disguised as convenience. We're talking about your non-stick pans, that's Teflon. The stuff that makes your carpets stain-resistant, Scotchgard. That waterproof jacket you love, Gore-Tex. Even the wrappers on your fast food. And of course, that little word, fragrance, on all your personal care products. It's literally everywhere. Okay, so if the source is right, and this is a deliberate operation, the next logical question is, who's behind it? Who are the architects of all this? Well, the next part of this breakdown names names, and they are some very, very big names. The source really puts DuPont front and center here, painting them as the original architects. And this timeline, it tells a pretty damning story. Look at this. Back in the 60s, their own internal studies were apparently showing that this PFOA chemical caused liver problems in animals. Fast forward to the 80s, and they're documenting severe birth defects in the children of their own female workers. So what did they do? According to the source, they didn't stop. They allegedly dumped millions of pounds of it straight into the Ohio River. And then, when the lawsuits finally brought all this to light, they did what the source calls a shell game. They spun off a new company, Chemours, and just replaced PFOA with a slightly different but similar chemical called Gen X. But it wasn't just DuPont. The source uses the word cartel for a reason. They also point the finger at 3M, the company behind Scotchgard, saying they had their own internal data on toxicity way back in the 70s. And then you have the FMCG giants, that's fast-moving consumer goods, companies like Nestle, Coke, Pepsi. They're not accused of making the chemicals, but of being the primary deployers of the microplastic weapon, thanks to the billions and billions of single-use plastic bottles they pump out every year. So we've identified the alleged weapons and the alleged architects. Now we get to the really grim part, the biological fallout. What is all this stuff actually doing to our bodies? To our human hardware, as the source puts it. And this is where they bring in the science, claiming the evidence is not just growing, it's becoming undeniable. So the source zooms in on the work of a researcher named Dr. Shanna Swan. She's focused on something called the anogenital distance, or AGD. It's basically the measurement between the anus and the genitals, and it's a key sign of how much testosterone a male fetus was exposed to in the womb. More testosterone means a longer distance. Well, her research allegedly shows a direct link. When a mother is exposed to phthalates, remember, the stuff hidden in fragrance, her baby boy is born with a significantly shorter AGD. The source calls this Phthalate Syndrome and says it's a direct indicator of demasculinization happening before birth, leading to things like smaller penises and other reproductive issues. And to put it in the source's own, very blunt language, the taint is shrinking. The argument is that these chemicals are literally getting in the way of the body's ability to follow its own masculine genetic blueprint. It's chemical interference, and it's happening before a baby even takes its first breath. And if that isn't shocking enough, the source then points to some incredibly recent science to back this all up. A study from just May of 2024, researchers looked at samples of human testes, and what did they find? 100% of them, 100%, were contaminated with microplastics. Every single one. We're talking plastics like PVC, which the study links to inflammation that just wrecks sperm count and their ability to swim. And it's not just the testes. Just a few months before that, in February 2024, another study came out. This time, they looked at human placentas. And the result was exactly the same, 100%. The natural shield that's supposed to protect a baby in the womb, totally and completely breached by plastic. It's just staggering. And this chart really puts it into perspective. The researchers also tested dog testes, and you can see the levels were high. But look at the human samples, nearly 3 times higher. And the placentas, total saturation. The source uses this to argue that whatever is happening, it's hitting our most vital reproductive organs in a uniquely devastating way. Which brings us to the final and maybe the most disturbing part of this whole thing. Why? If this is all deliberate, as the source claims, what on earth is the endgame? What's the ultimate goal of this alleged chemical attack on our ability to reproduce? Well, the source lays out what it sees as a 4-step plan leading to a post-human future. First, you cause natural fertility to collapse by systematically poisoning the reproductive system. Second, you chemically engineer androgyny, blurring the biological lines between men and women. Third, you make the entire population dependent on technology just to have kids. And what's the final step? You commercialize the creation of life itself. Think lab-grown wombs, genetically edited IVF, turning the miracle of birth into just another product you can buy. And this quote from the source really sums up their terrifying conclusion. The goal, they allege, is to make us forget our own natural power, forcing us to accept our role as their engineered, synthesized livestock. I mean, just let that sink in. It's not just about control. It's about fundamentally changing what it means to be human, taking something natural and sovereign and making it artificial and controlled. And so, that's where the source material leaves us. It ends with this one massive, provocative question for all of us to think about. Is all this chaos we're seeing with fertility, is it really just an accident? Or, as this source alleges, is it a feature of a much larger plan? Are we, right now, being chemically engineered for some kind of post-human future?